Hello everyone, welcome back to another Ubuntu Engineering Live. This is a series of web broadcasts that we do every other week to give people in the community or just general Ubuntu users an update on what we've been doing. So with me today I've got Alan Pope, Benjamin Zeller, Will Cook, and Jambor. I'm going to try to pronounce your last name. I'm sorry, I probably butchered the first. Who are all going to be giving updates. We are being broadcast on ubuntuonair.com, which is the main page for this kind of session, and it'll include the video, and below it it'll have an embedded IRC window, which will point you to the #ubuntu-on-air IRC channel on Freenode, which is where we will be taking your questions. You can ask us a question on any subject, whether we talk about it or not, at any time. Start your question with the word question in all caps, because I have a IRC highlight on that, and that'll help me see them as they come across and not lose them in the flow. Try to ask your questions when they occur to you instead of waiting to when we're done talking, because if we go all the way towards the end of the hour, you won't have time to ask them, or if everybody asks them at once, we won't have time to answer them. So yeah, it looks like Alan posted an example in the IRC window that is wrong because you are not supposed to have spaces between the letters, Alan. So yeah, just the word question, no spaces between the letters, all caps, and I'll get a nice highlight on that. All right, well, we will move along then to Alan, who's going to give us an update on the Core Apps projects.
Hello. The first thing to note this week is a lot of the core apps have been impacted by a Jenkins outage for the last few days, and what that means is while the developers are working and very busy actively committing code, unfortunately it's not landing in trunk and therefore not landing on the phone. So we have that being worked on at the moment. We hope that will be fixed today. And then there should be a rush of updates that should land in quite a few of the core apps. That's kind of frustrating, but that will be fixed shortly, and everything will be sorted. Another piece of interesting news: the design team last week had a sprint, and two things came away from that: some prioritization of work from the design team for redesigns of and design work on some of the core apps, not all of them. I've mentioned this before, but we've got some specific timelines for some of those. So over the next month or two, they'll be providing new designs for some of the core apps that we'll start working on. In addition, they've also commissioned some usability testing on the phone. We do this periodically, both for the desktop and now the phone, and we're expecting some feedback for some of the core apps from that usability testing, as well as feedback for the rest of the phone as well, the shell and all other parts of the phone as well. But from my perspective, I'm interested in the feedback for the core apps like music, weather, clock, calendar, and so on and so on. And so we'll be acting accordingly on that and working to resolve those usability bugs, and we'll get that landed as soon as we can. Onto some specific things for each of the apps. Most of them are in bug fixing mode, so there's not a huge amount of new features or interesting stuff happening in the core apps. So a lot of them it's bug fixing, UI tweaks, that kind of stuff. One app that is changing dramatically though is the clock. So I've talked about the clock reboot in the past, and one of the things we've done with the clock reboot is we've now made it the default on the phone. So if you get a recent image, we removed the old clock app and the purple one. So if you're looking at the purple clock app, that's gone. It's now the new style, kind of lighter theme that Netlesh is working hard on. It's not quite finished yet. We've still got some work to do, and that will be finished shortly. There are some notable features missing from the clock. The timer and stopwatch, for example, are gone. they'll come back in a later version of the clock soon. Whether we've had some minor visual improvements and other things to note, terminal, we've got a new contributor who's helping us work through some of the bugs on the terminal app. We added the cool old terminal feature that I mentioned previously, and then immediately discovered some device-specific issues with one of the devices. The GPU isn't able to do some of the effects that we were hoping to do with the cool old terminal. But so we're going to probably disable some of those and deliver a kind of a terminal that works on every device. We've also added the security model that we were asked for by the security team for the terminal app. So this is similar to the one that's in the file manager. So in the file manager, if you leave your phone on your desk and you happen to have not locked it, then somebody can't come up and damage files with the file manager because it prompts you for your pin lock, your passcode. The same has now been implemented in the terminal. A couple of things in the file manager that's being worked on. The guys are looking at implementing Samba support in the file manager, which will be useful for any of you who have Samba shares at home that you want to read content from or copy files to and from your phone from a Samba share. And we're also looking at making some visual changes to the file manager to make it more consistent with other applications. So, for example, the file manager still has the toolbar at the bottom. We're going to move that to the top, but there are interesting challenges with that because the file manager has quite a lot of functionality. There's a lot of buttons, menus and things, and so it's a bit difficult to cram all of that in the top header. So we're going to have to think carefully about that. I think that's about it, really.
All right. So Samba support sounds really cool. Is there any plans to add SSH or SFTP support? Because that's what I personally use around here.
No, we don't have plans to do that yet. We certainly could do. Samba seemed a use case that would help a lot of people. For many of the kind of devices you have, home backup solutions, that kind of stuff, are capable of doing Samba, and Windows can, and Macs can, and Linux desktops can as well. So we figured it would be a good first hit, and we'd be able to iron out a bunch of issues with that, and then maybe look at the others like NFS and SSH and all that kind of stuff later. All
right. Now, are they having to develop that themselves, or are they able to use something from upstream where they got the plugin from?
I'm not sure, actually. That's a good question. I don't know. It's being investigated at the moment.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Alan. If anyone has any questions about core apps, start asking them in IRC, and in the meantime, we will move on to Benjamin, who's going to give us an update on the Ubuntu SDK work.
Okay. Yeah. So the biggest change we will land soon, which means it's in landing right now and will be available soon, is the support for scope development from the SDK. So that means you can directly run scopes on your phone and debug them. So it's already working. Yeah, we are just testing it now, and we'll release it soon to the PPA and to the archive. So that should be available. I guess this week, or if not this week, next week. And this update also will bring improved debug output support. Like currently, when you look at the output of your apps in the IDE, there are lots of spaces in between and stuff like that. So we found a way to work around that and get the output much nicer on your screen. What else? Yeah, we are working on improving our autopilot tests so we can test if our changes break anything and to quality high. And yeah, there will soon land a new ADBD, which is the daemon on the phone that helps us connect to the phone and run So basically makes it possible for us to remote control the phone. There will be a new policy that changes how ADB is running on the phone. It will change to run it will not run as root but as phablet user in the future. So we had to some changes to support both both ways of running ADB, which should also land together with the scope support. And yeah, the next work I will be doing is improve the debug tools more. So, for example, at the moment we still require a debug policy for running the apps on the phones and control them. Yeah, I'm going to change that so that this policy can go away, at least if the app is running in release mode. If it's compiled in debug and you need to attach GDB server, then this policy is still required. But yeah, at least for release mode, we want to be as close as possible to confinement. And yeah, that's what I'm going to implement next. I think that's all from the tools side.
All right, the new scopes, or the ability to run scopes that you're working on, is that going to use the same kits infrastructure that we have for apps?
Yes, it's exactly the same.
Okay, so we get to use the little green arrow on Qt Creator, just like we're familiar with. Fantastic. Exactly. And there's going to be a debug mode that these scopes are going to run in, right?
Yeah, well, if you compile your project with debug enabled, you will be able to attach a GDB server to it, and you will actually be able to step through your code and you see the variables and stuff like that, just if you would hack on any application on your local host.
All right, and weren't there changes also to the way the scopes are being run in Unity to support launching them from Qt Creator?
Actually, I did not have to change anything on the scopes. What we are doing is we inject a helper script into the command line for the scope. So in our click packages, you have the scope ini file. In that ini file, you can put in a line that tells the scope registry how to execute the scopes. And what we do is use this command line to inject the script that will set up the environment in a way so we can get the standard arrow and standard output to QTC and can inject GDB server and stuff like that. So the scope, after the script is finished doing its work, it will just go away and will be replaced with the scope itself. So it's not much difference between running a scope without QTC attached or without.
Okay. And when do you think all of this is going to land? Is it going to need an image promotion for devices, or just work on the SDK packages?
It's just SDK side. No, there's no change. There were some changes on the image, but they are already there. So all we need now is that our SDK packages land.
All right. Looking forward to it because I've been working on my first scope recently. If anyone follows me on Google+, you've probably seen all of my adventures in C++ to figure out how to get that working. So anything that makes that easier is going to be a huge win for us. All right, thank you, Benjamin. We're going to move on now to Will Cook, who's going to give us an update on the desktop.
Hello all. I haven't been here for a few sessions now, so I'm going to go back through the notes and just perhaps recover stuff I've already covered, so just ignore me if so. Stuff happening in printing. We've got support for IPP over USB. So IPP is the sort of new auto setup, auto configure driverless printers. So you don't have to go away and find specific drivers. Modern sort of consumer grade printers, I suppose, support that protocol, but over USB. And then they have a little web server to do configuration, that kind of thing. So Till and one of his mates are adding that in. That will be coming very soon. Just 5 minutes. We have fixed a few bugs in LibreOffice, so now version 4.3.0 is in U, and by now it's probably in BLTS as well. We had, which has now been fixed, a bug in Chromium which meant that it wouldn't compile on i386, but since I made that note we fixed it, so Chromium i386 is back up and running again. We've got various updates to libraries, glib, some gstream plugins, WebKit for GTK, various other bug fixes. I won't go into the details of that. And then most recently this week we've been doing, excuse me, doing some work on adding Mir support, or doing more work on adding Mir support into GTK. So your GTK apps will run happily under Mir. That, as a proof of concept, is already working, so we're just doing some extra tidying up and bug fixes there. On the Cheelin side, we've been doing some more bug fixes and some packaging for the SOGO input method. This is I think I've talked about this before, but this is a way of typing in on a normal QWERTY keyboard and finding the equivalent Chinese character set. So you can type in on a normal keyboard and still search in Chinese. That's all baked into Cheelin now. We announced the Ubuntu Developer Desktop. Well, actually, I think we announced it on one of Popey's Hangouts a few weeks ago, but we formally published some blog posts and made sure that all the packages are up to date now, so people have been going away and downloading that and having a play with it. We've got a couple of bugs reported already, which Didier is working on at the moment. So if anybody else can, if anybody else wants to download that and test it, then we'd be really grateful for their feedback. There'll be more blog posts coming in the next few weeks about where we're going once we've got Android, nailed down. We'll be moving on to other programming languages, and all that will be discussed in the next couple of weeks. Accessibility, we've started to refresh all of the accessibility wiki pages. They got quite out of date and behind the times. So Luke has been looking at where we are at the moment. He's updating all of those wiki pages, so they should be nice and up to date in the next couple of weeks. We've talked about Chromium, and then last but by no means least, Chromium has now got support for PDF files within the browser. This is a feature that Chrome has had for a long time. Firefox does it, I think. This is where you click on a PDF file, rather than then having to download that PDF, you can just view it inline in the browser. That was proprietary, it's now open source, and we've got that baked into Chromium, probably in there now, but give it a week or so and it'll be there for testing. Personally, I find that feature extremely useful. Rather than having to download and then find a PDF file, I can just read it inline and then close the tab and I'm done. Some people probably don't like that. You can disable it in the plugins if you so wish, but I'd be interested to hear what people think about that PDF reading in the browser. And that's pretty much everything. And sorry for coughing, I've got a bit of a cold.
So GTK support in Mir is a nice feature that we're working on. Are there any apps that are currently running, and can we run them from the Unity 8 trial ISO?
Yes and no. For example, gedit will load. You have to fiddle around with desktop files a little bit. If you want to know more about that, come and hang out on the Ubuntu desktop channel and we'll talk you through that. I'll perhaps even write up a Google Plus post or something on how to do it. But you may load it, but you can't type into it. At the moment, there's GTK keyboard input handling problems. So you can load it and you can see it and it's there, but you can't actually do anything with it. So there are probably GTK apps which will work just with a mouse. But yeah, that's one of the problems we're working on right now.
And does this require making patches to GTK, or did they have an abstraction layer where we can just plug in Mir support?
I'm afraid I don't know. I'll have to go and speak to Robert Ansel about that. Unless anybody else knows, I'm afraid I don't know.
Okay. And you mentioned the Ubuntu Developer Desktop. Could you give us kind of a high-level overview of what the goal is and the target audience for that?
Yeah, so the target audience is developers in general. we know that people like doing software development on Ubuntu, and yeah, all the tools are there, but sometimes it's not quite as easy to get them set up and running as perhaps it could be. So Didier has been working on a sort of one-line command that you can run, and it will pull in all of the various bits and pieces that you need. So right now we're focusing on Android development. So you can run the command from the CLI, and it will pull down the latest version of the Android developer environment, all the bits and bobs that go with it. You still have to pull down the Android libraries separately, the specific ones that you want to use, but all of the environment will be set up for you and ready to go. And it will always be the most up-to-date one, so there's no more downloading the new one and uninstalling the old one. This will take care of it all for you. And we've got tests set up there as well, so you know, if I don't know, if the download location changes, we'll know about it within a few hours and we'll get it fixed. So this is going to be a reliable one-stop shop for all of your Android development, and then in the future Dart and Go and Juju and obviously Ubuntu SDK. All of this stuff will just come sort of easily installable and always up to date.
Okay, so the target audience isn't necessarily people who are writing apps for Ubuntu. It's for people who are writing anything on Ubuntu.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, obviously we target all developers, so Ubuntu developers come under that umbrella, but yeah, it's not just focused on Ubuntu developers. Okay.
And if somebody wants to help you build support for their preferred development target, how do they get involved with this?
Come into Ubuntu-desktop and speak to Didrox, and he'll be very, very happy to hear from you, or jump on the desktop mailing list and send us feedback that way, or Google Plus for Didier, Didrox, Didier Roche. We'll be glad to hear about that and to see people getting involved.
All right, and one last question, and you may not know the answer to this one either. This may be a Thomas Foss question, but are there plans or any work to run Firefox or LibreOffice on Mir? I think LibreOffice has its own UI toolkit that they use, and Firefox, of course, has got all of Gecko that needs support.
That's right, yeah. So they do use their sort of custom toolkits. For Firefox, I'm not sure, but for LibreOffice, there was work being done to have it run on GTK. So if that work gets finished in the near future, then you'll be able to run it because of the work we've done with GTK. The alternative is that we do build a sort of custom backend for Mir. I think the GTK option is probably easier, probably quicker to achieve. So that's going to be the focus of our efforts for LibreOffice. For Firefox, I don't know.
Okay. And for clarity, this is only GTK 3, right? We're not supporting GTK 2?
I don't know. I don't see there's any reason why we wouldn't support both. I think there's a lot of apps in GTK2 that we would like to see running perfectly on Mir, so there's no reason why we shouldn't do that.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. If anybody has any questions, you need to start getting them in before we run out of time. All right, we're going to move on to Jambar now, who's going to give us an update on, I hope, the Ubuntu UI toolkit.
Well, you hope. You think that I'm not going to be able to talk, or what?
I'm just not sure if you're going to talk about something else.
No, toolkit, actually. So, yeah, what had happened in the past couple of weeks, it was like we had a bunch of bug fixes rolling on, like things like OSK hiding when you tap over to some other component. This is actually related to the focus handling on components. So right now, every single component, when you tap it, it's going to take a focus. Other bugs that I can just enumerate. There were a couple of bugs for the header fixing, the alarms. We had a couple of bugs for that as well. Most of them blocking. Yeah. Then there was a header animation included. So when you change the tabs or change the page stack and change the pages in the page stack, you will see some animation on the header title. So that has been added recently. Then there was new visuals added for the overflow panel, which had actually landed recently. So you are not going to see any more popover when you tap on the the drawer or on the actions, you will see a nice squarey shape with shades and having the actions enumerated there. Yeah, focus handling I was already talking about. So this means that popovers, dialogues are going to take the focus and they are going to restore the focus once they are closed. Then a couple of weeks ago I read that there were some logs about the upstream settings to be included, so there were decisions made, and now we have it implemented. So now the SDK is pulling off the Qt Labs settings with it. So for app settings, now you can use the Qt Lab settings officially until we provide a backend which is going to sync with U1DB. When are we going to be able to do that? I don't know yet. Yet it hasn't been talked about. Then there was a bunch of work on creating this new list item, which is going to be a bit more performant and to cover all the design needs that we have at the moment. It is not yet released. We do not want to release them separately. It might be that it's going to come all at once. We currently have about 12 merge requests pending on each other, like lined up on each other, and but it looks quite nicely. The progress is good. We might land it by the end of September, but the target is to land it for 14.10. Then there was decision made that we are not going to have permanent state saving in the state saver. So we are going to keep the state saver for what it is now. So it is just for saving the state in case of improper application close. If you want to have some properties to be saved automatically and to be stored persistently, you should use the settings. So we don't want to mix these two APIs because they have completely different purposes. Actually, the permanent state saving would overlap with the settings, and I think I do feel that settings is a much better choice for that. Then what's next? Then actually we are having a task which is pending since we migrated to 5.2, but we didn't, because of lack of time, we couldn't actually finish that. So we are turning to use the proper singletons in whatever it is possible in the toolkit, which means that we have a couple of QML singletons which we are turning into a proper instantiation. Couple of context properties which we want, which can be turned as singletons, so we are going to turn them as well. This doesn't go to the units or localization context or to the theming itself. That's the current setup is such that we just cannot move that into a singleton. And then we start to freeze the style API. So we are going to start to create more and more. To populate the style, the Ubuntu component styles module with more style APIs. Yeah, that's in a nutshell, I'd say. Big nutshell.
All right, so these style APIs, are these going to be for developers to override the default style of components?
Yeah, this is something that is really beneficial to have an API for the style. So when you override a style, you know what you can override in a way that it is going to be persistent through all the themes, and the component is going to know about them. This does not mean that the proprietary styles cannot add other properties or other functionalities, but the components are not going to know about those things. However, if someone is deriving from that particular custom style, they can still use that API. So it's a kind of incremental stack API.
Okay, and are these going to be done per component or per instance of a component? For example, if I wanted to change the color of all the buttons in my app from orange to blue, I would do this just once?
Yeah, yes. That is a well. There is a different. There is another thread also for the palette colors, to fix the palette colors, to add more colors or more granularity to the palette itself. But that is not yet baked. So we are just discussing like how much should we add to the palette, and what could be like what kind of colors could be made common and so on. Because the palette is not necessarily just about the colors, it's more about semantics. So we have the Ubuntu colors for particular colors, but the palette is more semantical.
Okay.
So about the styles, every single component is going to have a style API as well. So the component API is not just going to be the component API as itself, but it is going to have its own style API.
Okay. And will we be able to have like separate themes? Currently, I think the theme we use is ambience. Is there going to be the option to ship alternative themes for the default component styles?
Well, yes, yes and no. I mean, you can override the theme, and you can create your own theme anytime. That is possible even now. It's a different story that it's a bit cumbersome and it's not documented anywhere yet. The main reason is that we also see that this kind of theming is not necessarily the best one, in the sense that you cannot necessarily change the colors of some subtrees, and we are also having some studies about how to do this kind of sub-theming, which means that you could use, for instance, a dialog and all its components to use a completely different theme from the application. So the application could use the ambience, and you could use, for instance, the Suru dark theme in your dialog. What comes to the theming, yeah, we have ambience, and actually we are having the Suru dark theme as well. So both themes are there. We have the Suru gradient, which I think it's going to be deprecated, so it's not going to be in use anymore. However, the thing is that when you set a dark color for your application's background, that is going to switch the application to use the pseudo dark theme.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that manually as well, but it's enough to set a dark color for your background, and that is going to be automatically taking the use of the other one.
Okay. Going back to the Qt settings component that you were talking about earlier, that is that's in Qt.labs.settings.
Yes.
Are we officially supporting that? Because I know Qt.labs is not an upstream supported.
Yes, it's a good question. Actually, we are going to support that API. Yes. We are going to take that API. We are going to take the API, which whatever API is going to be in the Qt settings when it's going to be available. If that settings API is going to land in the Qt Quick or somewhere in the official packages, then we are going to remove the support from the Qt Labs, because there is no longer need for that. Now, the good thing is that till it's in Qt Labs, then till then we can create our own backend. It's not like after that we cannot create our own backend, but if we do create at some point our own backend for the Qt for the settings, then the only thing that you would need to do in the app is just remove the import of Qt Lab settings, and you will use our own settings component. If it is going to land in the upstream, then well, even then it's possible, but then you would need to do this kind of named import in order to force the QML, or in order to let the QML know that you want to use the Ubuntu component settings, the toolkit settings.
Okay. All right. I've had a question for you. Since we've changed to the new style headers and opened up that bottom edge for app developers to implement however they want, there's been discussion kind of on and off about providing some pre-made components for using in the bottom edge. Is there any work being done on that? I know we've got, I think it's panel is the easiest to use right now.
Yeah, so far that is the only design that we have. If you check the bottom edge swipe, there is no concrete or there is no unique design on how to use that bottom edge swipe, how it should look like. Once we are going to have a consistent one across the applications, then we can just make one, yes. But there has been no plans so far for that because of lack of the Brassian design.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't thinking so much one to use all the time, but just a selection of components that are designed to use from the bottom edge.
Yeah, well, selection of components is like, well, you can put whatever component on top of the panel, or you can put whatever component the panel is going to drag in. It's not an issue. You can put whatever toolkit component or even Qt quick controls component if you want to be brave. But so far there was no clear decision or no clear guidance or no clear pattern, let's say in this way, that how this panel swipe should work, what should contain, should it have a special design, how it should behave. Some applications are pushing they are pulling up a page and then pushing them into a page stack. Some others don't do anything like that. The camera, for instance, just pulls up a panel with some settings that you can do. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope somebody's got some questions in IRC because I have only just a very short update from the community team, and if we don't have any questions by the time I'm done with that, we'll be ending this a little bit early. So the community team and the local council have been planning the next Ubuntu Global Jam. If you've never heard of a Global Jam or participated in one, we pick a weekend each cycle and encourage people to get together with other Ubuntu users in their local area to meet up for coffee or food or just fun and work together to do something to contribute to Ubuntu. If you go to wiki.ubuntu.com/Ubuntu Global Jam, we've got quite a bit of documentation written on different things that you can do for one of these and some help to get you set up planning one and organizing one. We also ran 2 different workshops last Wednesday, where we took questions from people on IRC. It was another one of these on-air broadcasts, and we went through the different steps to set up a global jam in your area. So if you're interested in that, you can go back and watch those videos. You can read, like I said, the wiki page, and try and find 1 or 2 people in your area. That's all it takes to have a successful global jam. And just pick a time and a place to meet and something to do while you're there. And if you do decide to do this, we've got the Ubuntu Global Jam page on the Loco team portal, loco.ubuntu.com/events/Global Jam. You can register an event for your team on there and mark it as part of the Global Jam. And that helps us show off the different teams that are participating in this. So that is September the 12th, 13th, and 14th. So that weekend, it doesn't have to be on those dates. If you need to do it, the 11th or the 15th or even the week after, that's fine. You can add it to the Global Jam event anyway, as long as it's an event that you're doing to try and participate in that. And then, as Alan has pointed out to me on our chat here, we've also set up a new mailing list for the Ubuntu community team. It is, creatively enough, ubuntu-community-team@list.ubuntu.com. And we set this up because we didn't really have a good place to discuss community events planning, like the Global Jam and the Ubuntu Online Summit. And we wanted a place where we can have those conversations out in the open and get people to participate in them without necessarily flooding mailing lists where it's only vaguely on topic. So if you're interested in community planning and discussion with community leaders, you can join that mailing list. Again, that's ubuntu-community-team at list.ubuntu.com. And those were the only updates that I've got, other than we've been working constantly to improve the communication between community developers and guys like Benjamin and Jambor here, who are building the tools that they're using. And we're going to be adding quite a bit more documentation to the developer portal, developer.ubuntu.com. We've got somebody on now who's actually writing good, high-quality docs for us, so that'll be improving quite a bit in the near future. And that's all the updates I had, and we've got only one question I see on IRC. Well, two questions from the same person. Are there going to be Hangouts that allow viewers to join in the room? We don't usually for these because it's really just giving an update. When we have the Ubuntu Online Summit, which is going to be in November, then we encourage anybody who wants to be part of the conversation to join the Hangout, because those are really more back and forth discussions and planning sessions. But UbuntuOnAir.com is open to anybody in the community, so if you have something you want to discuss on air or a presentation you want to give, ping Jose on IRC, and he can get you set up with a day and a time to use it and help you set up the Hangout also.
One thing that George suggested that we've done a couple of times in the past is have a Hangout after the release. And just like, shoot the breeze, everyone just hangs out, and the Hangout is open for anyone to join. It's not a Hangout on air, I don't think. It's just or is it? I don't think it was. I don't think it was broadcast. I think it was only ever a social like get together and shoot the breeze. But I think there would be it would be a good idea if we could try out various technologies, not necessarily just Hangouts, but other ways and means, and that's maybe a discussion we could have on that new community list of what tools could we use, and should we have regular voice and or video based chats with people in the community, and do they need to happen regularly, and do they need to be shared and all that kind of stuff. That'd be a good topic for that list, I think.
That's true. You should start that topic on that list.
Okay.
Yeah, so if it doesn't need to be broadcast or recorded, then we could use something like WebRTC, which might support more people joining the discussion at once than Hangout.
Well, in my experience, it supports fewer.
Oh. Okay.
But yeah, let's have that conversation on the list and in the open and figure out.
All right, and then there's a part 2 to the question. It asks if there's a need for Java developers in Ubuntu. I'm kind of in the middle of an online course and lost some of his motivation. So there's two different areas where I think Java developers can contribute. If you're doing server-side Java, then you should definitely join #Juju and talk to people there about any of the Java-related charms. I think they've got one for Tomcat. They may have more all-encompassing ones, so if there's the standard Java J2EE web service that people like to use, you can help them put together a charm to make that easy to deploy on Ubuntu Cloud instances. I know that they would appreciate that. But if you're targeting desktop or mobile Java development, then what Will was talking about earlier with the Ubuntu Developer Desktop would be a good place to contribute. So that would be joining #Ubuntu-desktop and looking for Didrox on there. He's the one who's pushing that effort forward. All right, and LT asks, is the Ubuntu RTM for phone the same for the tablet? And is there any news you can share on any tablets being released later this year? So RTM is just for the manufacturers that we have lined up right now, so BQ and Meizu, who are only developing phones. The work that's going into it is going to be pretty similar between phone and tablet, because most of the underlying components are common between both of those. But there's not going to be a specific tablet RTM image because we don't have currently a manufacturer who's planning on shipping a tablet, which goes to your second part of your question. I don't have any news about tablets coming forward later this year. Sorry. I know it's still being worked on, but once we got those manufacturers who wanted to ship a phone, our priority was making sure that we had a good phone OS for them to ship. Does anybody have anything to add to that? All right, well, those are all of our questions. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We will be back next week, where I hope to have some people on from the cloud side of things and maybe some of the Unity 8 developers on. So come back in 2 weeks, same time, same channel, 1400 UTC, and ubuntuonair.com. And as I said earlier, we use ubuntuonair.com for quite a few things, so you should follow us on Twitter at ubuntuonair and youtube.com/ubuntuonair so that you can see all of the new things that are being broadcast on here. If you go to YouTube, you can also watch all of our old videos. We had, as I mentioned earlier, the workshops on the Ubuntu Global Jam. Every week the community team does a live Q&A that's hosted on here, and several other people have been using it also. So there's a whole bunch of videos on our YouTube channel you can go back and watch. And I'd like to thank Alan, Benjamin, Jambor, and Will, who had to drop off, for joining me today and giving us an update. And we will see you all in 2 weeks' time. Thank you, everyone.